The Senators made the playoffs last year for the first time in 8 years, but they're about to shock everyone by actually winning a round. 3 Stanley Cup favorites won't even make the playoffs. The defending champion Panthers are going for a three-peat, and one Canadian team finally has a real shot at breaking the drought. Let's dive into every single NHL team's realistic prediction for 2026. Starting with the Atlantic Division, and the Boston Bruins are in trouble. New head coach Marco Sturm has to completely rebuild their defensive structure just to scrape into a wildcard spot. They'll finish with 92 points, good enough for 7th or 8th in the conference if their neutral zone defense holds up. If Sturm's system clicks and the power play gets back to league average, they squeeze in. But if the defensive zone exits stay choppy like last season, they're watching from home. The middle six has to shoot better than 8%, or this gets ugly fast. Trade deadline position, quiet, maybe one depth add. The bigger issue is their aging core can't carry the load anymore, and without a true number 1 center driving play, they're relying on committee scoring that rarely works in today's NHL. Buffalo finally breaks through. After 14 straight years of missing, Bowen Byram's 2-year $12.5 million extension stabilizes their top 4 defense and gives them the puck-moving they desperately need. 94 points puts them at the 2nd wildcard spot. Their power play has to climb into the top third of the league, though. If Byram plays real top 4 minutes without bleeding chances against, they make it. The young core is ready to learn what playoff hockey feels like, even if it's just for one round. Expect them to be buyers at the deadline for the first time in over a decade. The X factor here is whether their goaltending tandem can handle the pressure of meaningful games in March and April. They've been playing meaningless hockey for so long that the weight of real stakes could go either way. Detroit stays on schedule, but it's another almost there season. The Red Wings hit 91 points, which keeps them right on the bubble until the final weekend. They'll finish 9th in the East, first team out. The roster keeps getting deeper and the age curve helps them. Plus, the cap rising to $95.5 million gives them room for targeted ads. If they convert more of their shot volume into high-danger chances and stay healthier down the middle, they sneak in. Otherwise, they remain the team nobody wants to play from November through March, but can't quite seal the deal in April. Steve Yzerman's patient rebuild continues to show progress, but patience is wearing thin in Hockeytown. One more year of missing might force them to accelerate the timeline with a bigger trade than they'd prefer. Florida goes for the three-peat, and they're the team to beat again. The reigning back-to-back champions return basically everyone and project for 112 points, first in the Atlantic. They'll manage minutes smartly around the Olympic break in February, pace themselves through January, and still stack wins whenever the schedule gets dense. Anything short of a conference final would be a massive disappointment for this core. The only thing that stops them is complacency or injuries. They're buyers at the deadline for depth, nothing major needed. What makes them special is their ability to elevate in the playoffs. Regular season records don't matter when this group can flip the switch and suffocate opponents with their forecheck. They've proven it twice now against Edmonton. If you want daily NHL coverage like this all season, hit subscribe right now because we're posting every single day. Montreal improves to 88 points, but they're still a year away from the real climb. The Canadiens show stronger 5-on-5 sequences, better puck exits, and an offense that doesn't need perfect shooting luck to score 3 goals. That 10 to 12-point improvement pushes them toward respectability, but it's not enough in the East. This is their last development first season before real expectations arrive in 2027. They'll be quiet at the deadline unless a young player becomes available. The Bell Center faithful are getting restless, though. Another year without playoffs tests even the most patient fan base. But management stays the course, knowing the prospects need one more season to marinate. Ottawa builds on their playoff return and grabs the 7th seed with 95 points. The Senators' core is maturing and ready to play fast, punish on the forecheck, and win by committee. The defensive spine shows up more nights, special teams avoid those brutal month-long slumps, and they carry momentum from last year's breakthrough into a wild card spot. Their goaltending finally stays consistent when it matters. Expect them to add at the deadline to bolster their chances. The Canadian capital gets playoff hockey for a 2nd straight year, and this young core has all the pieces to steal a first-round series. Their home record gives them the edge they need to shock a higher seed. Tampa Bay stays dangerous with 101 points and the 3rd spot in the Atlantic. The Lightning's competitive window remains open thanks to smart cap management and the higher cap ceiling helping them keep quality depth around their elite core. Home ice in round 1 is right there if they stay healthy. The defensive depth dictates whether they're top 3 in the division or settling for a wild card nobody wants to draw. They'll make a hockey trade at the deadline, nothing desperate. Julien Brisebois continues to work cap magic, but Father Time is undefeated. This might be the last year they can legitimately threaten before a retool becomes necessary. Toronto looks different after the Marner sign and trade to Vegas for Nicolas Roy, but they still hit 102 points for second in the Atlantic. The Maple Leafs lean harder on their remaining stars, trust depth scoring to stay afloat, and land in that 100-point range. They're good enough for top 3 in the Atlantic, but the playoff questions remain. How far they go depends on matchups and whether the postseason offense finally shows up when it matters. Some early season line juggling before they settle pre-Olympics. They're sellers at the deadline when they move Marner's replacement for futures. The pressure in Toronto reaches nuclear levels if they flame out in round 1 again. This might be the last chance for this core configuration. Moving to the Metropolitan Division, Carolina takes a step back without Rantanen but still makes the playoffs comfortably. After the mega deal saga where Colorado moved him to Carolina in January, then Carolina flipped him to Dallas on March 7th, 2025 for futures, the Hurricanes didn't get that MVP tier finisher long-term. They finish with 98 points, good for 4th in the Metro. Still a system-driven, top-tier defensive club, but their 5-on-5 finishing determines whether they're merely great or cup-level terrifying. If the goals come by committee, division title is in range. Rod Brindamour's system continues to maximize every player, but at some point you need elite talent to win 4 rounds. That's the piece they're still missing. Columbus shows clear improvement and fights for a playoff spot until the bitter end. The Blue Jackets went 40, 33, and 9 last year, but still missed. This year they hit 89 points and finished 10th in the East. Better balance, stronger two-way identity, but just not enough certainty to project top 8. If the power play pops and the top 6 finds consistent line combos, they surprise people. More likely, they're doing playoff math in the final week that doesn't quite work out. Comment below if your team's prediction is way off. I read everything and respond to the best takes. New Jersey gets back in with home ice if Markstrom holds up. The Devils hit 103 points and grab the 2nd seed in the Metro. Jacob Markstrom in a contract year is the swing factor. If he plays like a top 12 starter again, they have the scoring and transition speed to clear 100 points easily. If the crease slides back to league average, they're still a playoff team, just not a top seed. Extension questions linger into spring but don't affect his play. The Devils' speed through the neutral zone creates nightmares for structured defensive teams. They're built for the modern NHL and finally have the goaltending to match their skaters. The Islanders had more fun after winning the draft lottery and taking Matthew Schaefer 1st overall, but they're still stingy and land in the wildcard range. 95 points gets them the 8th seed. Their identity remains defense first and goalie backed. That low-event style keeps them in games during road-heavy stretches and lets them collect points in tight one-goal games. Late March scoreboard watching for seeding becomes their playoff warm-up. The Rangers snap back immediately under Mike Sullivan with the JT Miller trade giving them a new spine. New York finishes with 104 points, 1st in the Metro. Sullivan's identity coaching thrives on details and accountability. Their 5-on-5 play tightens up. The star talent plus a clarified top 6 lifts them to a division title and home ice. Ceiling is Eastern Conference Finals. Floor is a mid-seed with matchup variance. Watch the Zibanejad usage tweaks and firmer defensive pair hierarchy. Madison Square Garden becomes a fortress again when Sullivan gets buy-in from the stars. Miller brings the sandpaper this team desperately needed. Philadelphia stays on the right track, but it's not quite their time yet. The Flyers hit 87 points. Good for 11th in the East. Solid structure, growing skill. They defend hard and develop internally. They make life miserable for favorites, but sit just outside the top 8 unless the offense takes a bigger jump than expected. Late-season push requires help from other results. The arrow still points up for 2027. Pittsburgh competes harder under Dan Muse, but it's more retool than renaissance. The Penguins land at 90 points, 9th in the conference. Better 5-on-5 habits, slightly improved transition game, just enough scoring depth to stay relevant. A season of culture setting with an eye on a fuller pivot next year. The aging core gets one more kick at it before reality sets in. Washington sneaks into the 6th seed at 91 points with Ovechkin already holding the all-time goals record. He passed Gretzky in April 2025 at age 39 and turns 40 on September 17, 2025. The Caps profile as a bubble team whose playoff fate hinges on health and ringing league average offense beyond the top line. If they get in, they'll be physical and annoying. The classic veteran underdog nobody wants in round 1. Let's jump to the Central Division where Chicago takes a step forward but still misses the playoffs. The Blackhawks hit 79 points after securing Frank Nazar to a 7-year extension and drafting Anton Frondell 3rd overall. Though his entry-level contract is signed, but he's expected to play for Djurgården in Sweden for this season. Material improvement in goal differential, more competitive on the road, but a playoff spot waits until 2027 when the kids fill out and the pro depth gets sturdier. Colorado remains a contender even without Rantanen. The Avalanche hit 106 points for 2nd in the Central. The blockbuster trade changed their forward core shape, but the baseline stays high. Elite puck possession, playoff-tested stars, and a coaching staff that maximizes efficiency. Top 3 in the division with a second-round floor, and they'll explore deadline adds if finishing dries up. The path to another cup is narrower, but still exists if the defense drives offense and the power play stays lethal. Dallas enters cup favorite territory after Glenn Galatzan returns as head coach, and they land Mikko Rantanen from Carolina with an immediate extension. The Stars finish with 111 points, winning the Central Division. Their window is wide open with the scoring layers and playoff experience to go all the way. Central title, West Finals baseline, and legitimate cup odds if goaltending stays steady through the post-Olympic grind. This is their year to go for it. Minnesota gets stuck in the middle again with 88 points, good for 10th in the West. The Wild defend well enough to hang around, grind out low event wins, and capture points at home. Problem is playoff caliber finishing and power play punch over 82 games. Bubble to lower seed range at best, likely on the road in round 1 if they somehow get in. A deadline ad could nudge them up, but it's hard to see more than tough out status. Nashville makes the wild card with room to surprise at 93 points. The Predators' roster balance mixing snarl with skill plus a consistently good crease gives them a respectable floor. They bank points early, ride structure through winter, and scratch into the 7th seed. If the middle 6 scoring spikes and the power play avoids extended droughts, they can threaten a first-round upset. More likely, they're a competitive one and done. That's still trending upward. St. Louis stays frisky, but finishing remains the limiter. The Blues hit 92 points, 9th in the West, just missing the cut. Functional summer additions and a disciplined system keep them close. They sit just below the division's elite, toggling between the last central spot and the wild card race. If young pieces hit, they cleared 95 points. Otherwise, it's a respectable chase that falls a hair short. Winnipeg locks up a playoff spot with goaltending as their superpower. The Jets grab 99 points and the 3rd central spot. With one of the league's best nets and a sturdy defensive core, they just need to do enough offensively to turn 2-1 games into 3-1 wins. They sit in that central top 3 wild card crossover zone and profile as a brutal round 1 opponent again. If the top line drives a few extra goals at 5-on-5, they push for home ice. Utah shows progress over playoffs in year 2 as the Mammoth. After relocating from Arizona, they're building identity and showing the Salt Lake City market a rising product. 4th overall pick Caleb Desnoyers hasn't signed his entry-level contract yet and recently had wrist surgery, but asking for a playoff berth in 2026 is too soon. Expect a double-digit point jump to 73 points, more competitive special teams, and a clear home ice advantage at Delta Center. The arrow points up even if they miss again. Over to the Pacific Division where Anaheim gets better but stays 1 cycle away. The Ducks hit 81 points, showing firmer defensive structure and more controlled breakouts. The question is how quickly the scoring ceiling rises. A credible jump to mid-80s points is in play, but a playoff spot needs hot goaltending for a month and a power play surge. Not impossible, just unlikely this soon. Calgary has a transition year and finishes outside the top 8 with 84 points. Post-Markstrom trade in 2024, the Flames' identity shifted toward youth and flexibility. Progress markers everywhere, including shot share, development, and cap positioning, but not quite the horsepower to outrun the West's middle tier. High 80s in points and valuable reps for the next core is the realistic outcome. Edmonton gets right back in the Final Four chase with 108 points and the Pacific Division title. 2 straight finals losses to Florida sting, but the Oilers remain a powerhouse. They'll be in that 105 to 112 point zone, top 2 in the Pacific, and among the West's betting favorites. The difference between another run and finally breaking through is postseason defending and crease consistency after the Olympic break. Bank on elite offense, but the cup hinges on goals against. Los Angeles makes a playoff return with sturdier blue line depth. Ken Holland took over as GM and immediately added veteran defensive help with Ceci and Dumoulin plus Corey Perry on short-term deals. That screams raise the floor now. The Kings carve out 94 points and the second wildcard spot on structure and experience. Their ceiling depends on whether the scoring depth pops. They're back in and more playoff ready than last spring. Which rebuild succeeds first, Chicago or San Jose? Let me know in the comments. San Jose isn't there yet, but the rebuild finally adds NHL adults. The Sharks hit 69 points after drafting Michael Misa second overall, though he remains unsigned, while adding veterans like Orlov and Klingberg on short terms to keep games navigable for the kids. Still about playing the long game with better goal differential, fewer 10-game losing streaks, and a second half that hints at 2027 relevance. Bottom 5, maybe not. Bottom third, still likely. Seattle gets a needed scoring jolt and grabs a wildcard spot. Kaapo Kakko's 3-year contract signed on July 22, 2025 signals the Kraken's intent to juice finishing around a defensively sound team. 95 points gets them the 8th seed. Their structure and goaltending keep them in the hunt. If Kakko and one more winger convert chances, Seattle edges in. If finishing stalls, they're the good team with bad bounces that misses by a weekend. Vancouver stays good even post-Miller, but top 3 gets tighter. The January 2025 JT Miller trade to the Rangers removed a big chunk of play driving, yet the Canucks systems and remaining star core keep them competitive. 96 points lands them 3rd in the Pacific with a chance to win a round. Home ice is in play if the rebalanced forward group maintains scoring depth and the penalty kill holds. The ceiling narrows, but it's far from closed. Vegas becomes a juggernaut again with Mitch Marner's 8-year, $96 million sign-and-trade arrival, giving them a prime-age playmaker who bends the ice on both special teams and at 5-on-5. The Golden Knights hit 110 points, second in the Pacific behind Edmonton on tiebreakers. They're in that Pacific title fight with the Oilers and have cup favorite status if health cooperates. The forward mix is deeper, the power play gets a new quarterback, and the franchise's adaptable, ruthless DNA meshes perfectly with Marner's toolkit. Another parade is very much on the table. Quick summary before we wrap. 5 teams have legit cup chances, including the Panthers going for 3 straight, Stars with Rantanen, Oilers trying to break through, Golden Knights with Marner, and the Avalanche with a narrower path. Your wild card battlers include the Bruins, Sabres, Islanders, Capitals, Predators, Blues, and Kraken, all hovering around that cut line. Teams showing progress, but missing the playoffs, include Detroit, Montreal, Columbus, the Ducks, Flames, Sharks, Utah, and Chicago. 32 teams, 16 playoff spots, and 1 guarantee. You'll want to come back to this video in April to see how wrong I was. Subscribe for NHL coverage all season long, and I'll see you in the next one.